Hi, just a short video recap for you. The border target operating model was issued in August 2023 with a lot of changes coming in 2024. There's a lot of them. They're coming in various stages, so we thought we'd just give you a quick overview of the critical points that you might want to pay more attention to. So first of all, from January 31st, 2024, health certificates will be required for high and medium risk SPS, that's sanitary and phytosanitary, from EU. If your goods are classed as high risk or medium risk, and you can use our SPS checker, which you can download from our website to ascertain the correct category of high, medium, or low. If they are high or medium, they will require an export health certificate from the 31st January 2024, issued in the EU for import into GB. Second one down, import process pre-departure for IE to GB. Since Brexit in 2021, flows from Ireland to GB have been done using the deferred entry scheme, where the import has up to 175 days to be presented. Most people don't take 175 days, but equally they don't tend to do it at the time of crossing the border. Some do, but an awful lot don't. From the 31st of January 2024, the import declaration or the import process must be in place before you're allowed to leave Ireland heading for GB. GVMS is the mechanism that controls that. So at the moment you require a GVMS for export from GB or GMR, which is created by the GVMS, for export from GB to IEE and to mainland Europe. However, from 31st January 2024, you'll also require a GVMS or a GMR created through the GVMS system before you leave IE. So before you leave Dublin, you need to have your import process in place so that you can create a GMR that allows you to leave Dublin en route to Holyhead, for example. A big change that for Ireland. That's not happened previously. The deferred entry scheme was stopped in the UK from 2022, but obviously it's still carried on for flows from Ireland, and that's about to change, so be prepared for that. IPAFs, the kind of UK equivalent of traces, if you like, will be required for all SPS goods, including low, category low, and it also includes Ireland to GB flows. So an IPAFs declaration will be required for everything, whether it's high, medium, or low, and that will also include, for the first time, all flows from Ireland to GB, which of course that IPAFs declaration would need to be quoted on the full frontier declaration or the simplified frontier declaration, which then goes onto the GVMS system to create the GMR. So there's a lot of hip bone connected to the thigh bone process starting from Ireland at the end of January. We're more than ready, and we're more than happy to be safety for those whose plans are maybe not quite as robust as they'd like to be. One other thing to consider is that the requirement for an export health certificate and IPAFs for high and medium risk categories also applies to goods transiting through GB under the land bridge scheme, typically from say Calais through Dover through Holyhead to Dublin. The movement through the UK will require an IPAFs for all if it's SPS goods, and if they're high or medium risk will also require a corresponding export health certificate. Major change that, so it's worth noting that for the future as well. From March 2024, sometime during March 2024, the EU will roll out their ICS2 project for Ro-Ro and Maritime. It's already there for parcels and air. ICS2 is an upgrade to the import control system, better known as the Safety and Security Declaration, also known as the ENS. For flows into the EU, that includes Ireland and includes Northern Ireland. The ICS2 process will come into play from March 2024. The most significant thing about ICS2 is that it requires a 6-digit commodity code, often referred to as the HS code. That can create some challenges if, for example, your trader is completing their own import declaration. It is the carrier's responsibility to do the safety and security declaration. So the carrier needs to be sure of where they are going to get 6-digit commodity code from if they are not involved in either the export or import documentation. Need to assess where that data is going to come from. Important to note that this also applies to GB to NI flows, and that will come into play when ICS2 is actually implemented. There's a 200-day implementation window, so it's from March 2024. The 200-day window, the 200-day counter starts, but it's unlikely for most member states to go early on that process. So we expect most of them to use the full 200-day allocation, or perhaps a little bit more. By the 31st of March 2024, CDS for exports for GB declarations will kind of finally be in play. At the moment, it's possible on GVMS ports, not so good on, or particularly work on inventory link ports, and that creates a bit of a problem because trucks can divert at the last minute, and sometimes if you do an export on CDS for a GVMS port and it actually, through weather conditions or whatever, diverts to an inventory linked port, you can't change the export declaration. You have to redo it on chief. Sorry, lost my voice. But that's all been taken care of. The GVMS works today. Inventory link ports don't particularly work today, but during the first 3 months of 2024, that process is likely to be finalized, and there'll be a gradual rollout to include GVMS and inventory link ports to be finalized by the 31st of March 2024. So for those who are not yet ready for exports on CDS, now's a good time to up the ante on that. From 30th of April 2024, the physical checks for SPS goods imports into GB will take place. These are normally at control posts, although there are schemes in place to have this done further inland at ATTS locations, authorized trusted trade schemes, which can have, these pilots are running at the moment. They can have a situation where the veterinary check, if you like, is taken care of at the food premises where the goods are destined. As a IORI, we're already applying for ATTS authorization at a number of locations, but these are not yet confirmed. But likewise, they're not yet needed. But we're confident that they'll be in place ready for the end of April 2024. At the same time, and this only, sorry, I was going to say this only applies to high, medium, and low, but it actually applies to all SPS goods. But at the same time, there was a reassessment of risk categories for non-EU goods. So non-EU SPS goods, there will for the first time really be some low categories assigned in there, where there will be an IPAS declaration, like the EU low risk. There'll be an IPAS declaration, but no need for an export health certificate. So as we've always said really since day one, is that the process of Brexit means everything goes to kind of rest of world state, and then everything gets reassessed, and where simplifications can be applied, they're applied to the new Brexit traffic and the existing rest of world traffic. Well, the kind of reassessment of the SPS risk categories for EU and rest of world together is proof of that starting to take place. From 1st of October 2024, the Windsor Framework Customs Green Lane is in place. The food green lane is already in place, and you've seen that with the NERM scheme, the Northern Ireland Retail Movement Scheme, with the infamous not for EU labelling and so on and so forth. The customs green lane is not yet in place, but is expected to be in place by the 1st of October 2024. The green lane is for UK internal market trade, i.e. goods that are not at risk, goods that have left GB and are destined for NI and not for EU, hence the labelling on foods. The idea of the Windsor Framework Green Lane is to remove the need for commodity codes for internal market trade, to remove the need for a supplementary declaration, and the additional administration that goes with that, and also to be able to use commercial documents to create the declaration rather than full fat customs declarations. The design process is still being worked on. We're very much part of that with our colleagues at Fujitsu, Institute of Export, and HDS, as well as Comtieri with Shankar Singham. So we are busily working away to find the right solution for that, and we'll keep you posted as the year progresses. By 31st of October 2024, the UK is introducing its own safety and security declaration, lovingly known as the ENS. That will from the 31st of October, that will be required for GB imports from EU for the first time. It is the carrier's responsibility to submit an ENS declaration. Let's make that very clear. It's not the importer's responsibility, it's the carrier's responsibility. That normally is defined as the haulier, although technically, if the goods are unaccompanied, it is the shipping company. For example, an unaccompanied trailer, it would be the ferry company. We saw this happen before. The ferry companies very quickly changed their terms and conditions to say it's not them. So if you are a haulier, expect to have that liability and that responsibility on you to complete an ENS declaration. Unlike the ICS2 upgrade for the EU ENS, there will be no need for a commodity code on the GB ENS, and also the data fields are reduced to about 20 from a normal 37. So it's a simplified document, but for the first time it's a document that will be required. A lot of time between now and 31st October 2024, but this can has been kicked multiple times down the road, so we feel pretty confident that by 31st October it will actually happen, although it will be quite a simplified document. At the same time, the physical checks for SPS goods from Ireland into West Coast ports will now be eligible, if you like. Initially the SPS controls, the veterinary controls on inbounds, the border control post controls, were to take place from the end of April 2024, except for West Coast. From October 2024, those checks should also be in place at, for example, Holyhead. And then, aside from those trigger dates, during the course of 2024, there is also a number of changes that HMRC are trying to bring into place for the good of trade and the facilitation of smoother trade. One is reduced guarantees to HMRC. So, for example, for temporary storage facilities, for authorised consignee storage facilities, for bonded warehousing, so on and so forth, HMRC want to reduce the guarantee burden on the trader. The most significant on that is to reduce the guarantee required for a duty deferment account. Currently, if you have good financial standing, you can have a duty deferment account up to £10,000 per month without any bank guarantee required. During the course of 2024, this will be lifted to 30,000. So that's a pretty significant figure. There's also a voluntary standard being applied for customs brokers, which we're very much part of, which, unlike some European countries, customs brokers are not licensed in the UK. So a voluntary standard is very much something that we subscribe to and have done since, I don't know, 30 years ago, really. We've been saying probably for that amount of time that there needs to be some kind of quality standard. No, I'm not talking about AEO here. I'm actually just talking about the quality standard for providing the service. AEO is very much an HMRC process of, are you trusted enough to provide the service? Do you have the right processes, and so on and so forth? But just from a purchaser's point of view, the trader who wants a customs broker, how can they be sure that the standard is good enough? Well, the voluntary standard mark should actually help that process significantly. There's also improved processes for transits, known as NCTS 5, which will remove the need for a paper transit, as well as you can amend the document on once it's been created, and so on and so forth. So it's an improvement to the NCTS system, which I have to say, for the first time during 2023, had a few downtime periods, which is quite unusual for NCTS. So watch this space, but NCTS 5 will at least remove, it's about the only paper document kind of still required. You don't need a paper export declaration, you don't need a paper import declaration. You do for HA Carnet currently, and you do for TIR Carnet, and currently you do for transit, and of course removing that will make life a lot easier. And also the use of simplifications and a wider use of aggregation. We already do this quite significantly, and aggregation is a process where if you have repeat flows, rather than doing a declaration per movement, you can consolidate those over a 10-day period and do one declaration for all movements during those 10 days. So it's a significant saving and a very worthwhile simplification. So lots going on. You can rest assured that we're ahead of it. We're up to date with all of the processes. You can also find on our website, in our download and news section, a document which we lovingly call the BTOM on a page, which is the Border Target Operating Model timelines on one sheet of paper. so that you've got everything that you need to be concerned about all on one reference, rather than having to read the entire border operating model, which can be, it's actually quite an interesting read if you're in our world, but if you're not in our world, I can imagine it's yes, quite mind-numbing and quite confusing, to be fair. So, but you can rest assured we're there, we're by your side the whole way, and we're always one step ahead of the changes that are coming. So happy to be of service to you. Thank you very much. Good night, as they say, depending on the time of day.